The next speaker is Marleen Janssen Groesbeek, I hope I pronounced that correctly, from Eumedion, who is an expert on corporate social responsibility and sustainability, and she's going to be talking about another neglected subject, which is the role of institutional investors who ultimately manage the social capital of a lot of these countries.
So thank you very much for inviting me. I think I have to apologize that I'm not an academic because I was a journalist for almost 20 years and I'm not apologizing that I was a financial journalist, but that I'm not an academic. I moved over to the dark side almost a year ago, and that by the dark side I mean the financial institutions, in particular the institutional investors. My colleagues at the newspaper thought it was a very bad idea because the institutional investors were the people that were responsible for the financial crisis, and how could they even think about being responsible investors, because that's my specialty, to help institutional investors to become more responsible. And this is how we thought about institutional investors when I was still working at the newspaper. People who were already very rich, already were very privileged, and held their hand up to be saved when they made such a mess of it. But in the Netherlands, a group of investors really did apologize. They said, yes, we were blinded by the financial returns. Yes, we thought that the high return would mean that everything would be okay. Yes, we were very interested in corporate governance, but we only looked at the codes and the box ticking, and we had no questions about how the board of directors was managed, if there was any women on the board, because that's also a very prudent thing to do. And they also discovered that they weren't as smart as they thought they were, because they relied too much on the complexity of their products and the whiz kids, the financial whiz kids. And at the same time, looking at high returns, they were only interested in the short-term returns of listed companies and not really interested in what the companies were doing. But we have to change. And there's no easy solution, as this picture shows, where we have environmental problems, financial problems, and for this planet and all the people on it, it's really 5 minutes to 12. But how do you change as an institutional investor when you are between a rock and a hard place? The rock and the hard place are the funding of the pension, the Dutch pension funds in particular, is below the threshold because of this financial crisis. And the Dutch Central Bank and also the ECB don't like experiments or change in investment policy, but they need a new investment policy because the returns on the investments are not good enough to fund, to have a higher funding. In the Netherlands, there's at this time a huge debate going on about how high the pension rate should be, if you should increase the pension age, and there are even negotiations going on smaller pensions. And you can imagine that the people who have been paying 20 years or more their pension premiums are very angry. As investors move for lower costs, we see a lot of more passive, more index investing. But we have a responsibility, especially for future generations. And as you can see at this picture, there's a little baby with a huge bill of the credit crisis hanging around its neck. So what is the solution? Well, we change from shareholder to share owner. We invest in companies that invest in better behavior and knowledge of employees. But we also, as institutional investors, invest in our own employees. So the portfolio manager that is now still focused on short-term return and having his bonus paid should also pay attention to environmental and social and governance criteria. At Eumedion, there are 70 institutional investors as a group, and I'm not allowed to say that they work together because that would be really a sort of, how do you say that? Yes, exactly, antitrust behavior. And but they really try to engage together in improving the behavior of listed companies. And if you look at what they do is they enter into a dialogue with listed companies to increase the performance on environmental, social, and governance issues. Another change is that the fund managers are being paid on a different basis, not short-term performance anymore, but long-term performance, and their behavior should be in line with the interests of clients and beneficiaries of the pension funds. And the focus of the pension funds themselves should be more engaged. Share ownership and short-term is taboo. These are some of the Eumedion investors. As you can see, there are some company pension funds, but also American and British institutional investors. And Eumedion is there for listed companies in the Netherlands. And that's why I want to refer to Mr. Haldane, who said that in 2050, 22% of the British institutional investors would have their home base. So only 22% of their shares would be in Britain. Already in the Netherlands, that's the case. So only 22% of all pension funds, life insurance premiums are invested in the Netherlands, and 78% outside the Netherlands. If these shareholders or share owners engage with listed companies, they talk to the supervisory board and the management board and people from investor relations. What we ask is questions about risk appetite, risk management, remuneration, and disclosure of financial and non-financial information. Talking about remuneration, Mrs. Marleen said that CEO pay was also related to international trade flows and companies that were outsourcing their production. One of the things we can also say is that because of the transparency of CEO pay, the CEOs have discovered what their colleagues make, and they are really in competition for having the highest salary across the board. And that's what we see now, that the institutional investors want to stem. They are really asking listed companies not to pay such a high amount of money to their CEOs. And actually that's taking up most of our time in discussing, in the discussions with companies. Why do we do this? Actually that's really in our self-interest, because we see that risks like BP or Enron, Parmalat that if we don't pay attention to human behavior, to non-financial risks, we hurt the portfolio. And what we see at the same time is that listed companies are themselves becoming corporate citizens because they see there's a war on talent, there's a war for natural resources, they are being asked about their performance on human rights, and many more themes that are listed here. Yeah. If we care, and I heard Gordon Brown say that he cares over lunch, we should all strive for a sustainable and a fair society where everybody can have employment and prosperity, to use the words of Mr. Brown this afternoon. If we care, we should engage in the future. And that means that small investors and beneficiaries of mutual funds, pension funds, life insurances should not be passive but active and better engaged share owners. So when I save for my pension, I should ask my pension fund, what are you doing with my money? Is it invested in a good way? Are you paying attention to human rights issues, to environmental issues? Because if we focus solely on financial returns, we lose out on the environment, on health, and the future of our children, and even their children. The funny thing is that the governments and financial supervisors live in an illusion of control, and that's also the theme of this whole conference. You can't make more rules if you're not monitoring if people are really following the rules. And I guess we are building a big house of rules now, but nobody is paying attention if these rules are being followed. We cannot avoid risk. We can only try to make people behave responsibly. And we have to take responsibility for each other. And if we decide to create new global institutions, their prime task should be monitoring all the rules and guidelines we already have. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much.